AI is fundamentally changing the way that marketing works.
What can you do to get on the radar of AI tools to kind of recommend you better?
Distribution is still such a skill, but I do think this kind of like levels the playing fields in distribution a little bit. As more people use tools, these tools and they're embedded into like everything, where you have agents and video editors and design tools and like, your Gmail and like absolutely everything. Discoverability is only going to increase.
In dev tooling, timing is all that matters. If you do it too early, the buyer has not learned about the teams are evaluating the product. If you enter too late, then probably the developers have built something on the open source or they've gone to competition. And now prediction of timing using AI, and developers are at the forefront of most of the modern software buying journeys. The search and discovery of tooling has changed a lot. The journeys that used to start from communities or from search tools or search engines is now coming to agents, chatbot, and those interfaces where people are discovering the tool.
So you have sold to developers and technical buyers before. If you were in that position today, around the similar landscape that we are seeing today, where would you start?
Dev tooling historically has not had as many great ways to advertise. It simply has been like much harder for them to spend money, see it return well. But I think that's starting to change. The world of dev tooling is going to see this performance marketing world start kind of like blending into dev tools. Objectively, most ads really do suck. They're not even like very intelligent. I think that this context is interesting because it is like inside of the tool which you're using. These aren't like big like disruptive ads. They really are designed to be like, we saw that you were working on this. Not sure if you're aware, but Cerebrus has a solution to this. There's not a single platform right now that hasn't lost users because of advertising. In some platforms cases, it's increased. We've seen like several posts on social media, people screenshotting the ads and going, oh, this was actually really helpful.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this conversation. I'm Roshali. I lead social efforts here at Reo.Dev. Today we're discussing a very interesting topic. So the way developers discover, evaluate, and buy software is changing, and at the pace of, let's say, every time we blink. The Anthropics and Geminis of the world dropping updates almost every day. Developers changing how they work because of it. AI providers building even more for that behavior. It's a loop that's honestly, it doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. And the companies who are selling to developers and technical buyers in the middle of all of this definitely need to adapt their ways of going to market. And how do you exactly do this is a big part of our conversation today. So I have two founders with me who are both building for this new reality. Zach, co-founder and CEO of Gravity AI, a platform that surfaces contextually relevant ads inside AI assistants and coding environments. And Achintya, CEO and co-founder of Reo.Dev, a GTM intelligence platform that helps developer-focused companies find engineering teams who are looking for a solution exactly like theirs. Welcome, Zach and Achintya, and thank you so much for taking our time for this. So, Zach, let's start with you, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about Gravity AI?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really our goal is to make AI more accessible. Ultimately, I think accessibility means free. We've seen information become free, the internet be free, and most of this has been powered by advertising. But lots of the advertising isn't that great, in my opinion. It's not very tasteful, especially like if we just like talk about coding with AI today. It can get quite expensive quite quickly, especially if you want to use tools outside of like the Claude codes that are heavily subsidized. And that really means that it's really only usable by like companies, startups, and rich people. So as a result, I don't think nearly as many people can use it. So our kind of approach to solving this is, we think we need to pay around $1 trillion a year by 2035-ish to AI companies to actually make AI truly accessible, similar to the way that like Google search was and the internet was. We solve that by building actual infrastructure itself. So I think our approach is focused on like the infrastructure that is available to companies, whether they are advertisers or platforms.
Got it. Very interesting. And like, how long have you guys been building this out? And can you talk us through a little bit about how did it happen for you guys? How did you even come up with the idea? What was going on? Yeah.
So I think we're 8.5 months in. We started in July of 25. How it happened is I come from the world of like performance marketing. The last company I built was like tech-focused performance marketing. We delivered performance marketing services to like these like consumer brands. You think like online retailers. I ran that business for 6 years or so, grew it to 50 people. I had spent a couple $100 million on like Meta, Google ads, and these platforms hadn't changed very much in a while. I was getting frustrated with them, and I felt like there was a lack of innovation there. And at the same time, there was like this tsunami of AI that was arriving, and it was clear that it was coming for advertising, and I didn't know exactly what that looked like at the time. So I started spending time in San Francisco and meeting people and just tinkering at the same time, like through my last company, tinkering with different ideas. And it eventually became clear that like, oh, this is like a really big problem with AI itself. And there are not many people in the world that actually know how ad networks work, and especially how they actually deliver results for brands, which is the thing that's going to make advertising sustainable. It's not just like hey, let people run brand campaigns. Everybody, with the evolution of accountable advertising, you can spend money and see return, and you can track that return. And that's really important to brands, and that's increasingly important to all companies. It became clear that there weren't many people that could actually solve this problem well. And my co-founder and I decided to kind of like go all in, start a new company to do this, and that was July. Yeah.
Got it. Very interesting. And what kind of people are you seeing? What kind of coding assistants are you seeing working with Gravity today? How has their experience been so far? What are you seeing in terms of like how are developers reacting when they see ads inside their coding workflows? Do you want to comment a little bit around that?
I'll give it an example of a couple. There are several, but the first ad program in coding assistance that really existed was AMP Code. And we initially supported their program alongside their direct advertiser relationships, and then eventually ended up being responsible for 100% of it. Another example is like CodeBuff. Their free product is launched, or maybe not yet, but will be. And it's really cool. It's like genuinely you can have free coding supported by advertising. On the topic of like how people are reacting, I don't think everyone in the world likes ads, but they still use Google search, they still use Instagram. So it's like, I think people ultimately like the product significantly enough to use a product even with advertising in it. But I've been very surprised at the response. There's a couple of things that we've seen. There's not a single platform right now that has lost users because of advertising. So retention has not gone down. In some platforms' cases, it's increased, which is kind of weird to me, but it's happened. And then the second thing is we've seen like several posts on social media, dozens of posts actually, with people screenshotting the ads and going, oh, this was actually really helpful. I didn't know Cerebrus had all of these products. Because the ads are designed to be relevant to what you're actually working on in the time. And through some clever deployments, we've been able to have the coding assistant kind of like give us context on what the code base is, what the tech stack being used is. And then on top of that, an understanding of the conversation. The ads can actually show you companies or solutions like Rio, for example, that are actually relevant to what's happening. And if you think of it from the context of a coding agent, you're installing stuff a lot. And there's often solutions that exist to your active problem that you were not aware of. So surfacing those solutions has had a really good response from users.
Got it. Also, I'm really curious, right? Like, how was this received when you pitched this idea to your investors? Do you want to tell us that story? Because it sounds very exciting because you're building this out and it seems like it would be such an amazing opportunity for people who want to advertise in just the relevant space that would, see a lot of positive reception.
Before doing this, my co-founder and I were working, we had gone pretty deep into trying to essentially like automate advertising. I was new to the world of like fundraising because I bootstrapped the last company. I didn't even know what a seed round was, so like understood no terminology at all. And so I took a few meetings for that last idea, and everybody thought it was a really horrible idea. I was like, oh, interesting. So some of them had some great insight, some of them had some terrible insight. But nevertheless, like it was definitely eye-opening for me about how the world worked. Ironically, actually, when we started working on this idea, I didn't go to like fundraise or anything. I had invested into the company, so we had funds, and we really just focused on like integrating with platforms, kind of like starting the network itself. And so to this day, I guess like I've spoken to investors, but I haven't really pitched many. Our seed round we got preempted for. So a fund called us and basically said, hey, we'd like to invest. And that kind of like triggered lots of other funds looking to meet with us over the next week, like the preceding weeks. It's been a very interesting dynamic from an investor's perspective, especially like a venture investor's perspective. Like there's a lot of room for this to grow, and there's parts of it that are like very easy to understand. So I've been surprised at the response. Like it's definitely been overwhelmingly positive. I've had like dozens of firms ask to invest or try to get meetings with me to invest. Ultimately, I think though, like people understand that like it's a difficult cold start. It's a really big problem to solve if it works. There is like no limit to the amount of capital that we could bring on and effectively deploy. To date, with what we've spent and been able to return from like a strictly like business like revenue perspective or revenue opportunity perspective, the economics of this model have been really strong.
I love that. It's amazing. And now to you, Achintya, right? So for those who don't know, can you give us a little bit into inside view of Reo.Dev and how you got here?
Sure. Reo.Dev is kind of like a GTM platform for companies which have technical buying journeys or which focus on developers. So in a way, what we do is we use AI to interpret millions of activities and signals across open source, first-party data, product trials, third parties, and so many sort of intent signals, and convert that into a sales pipeline for customers to tell them that, okay, these are the organizations, accounts, these are the people, these are the teams who are evaluating you, and this is the right time to get in. We sort of add a lot of context to buying journeys and tell our customers this is the right time to actually focus on. And that's what makes all the difference. I come from a background where I have built DevTools, built infra software products, and sort of, always saw this problem that technical buying journeys are fundamentally different. And the realization was that whenever the buying journeys change, the GTM software changes, right? And yeah, that's kind of the change or the wave that we are trying to write.
Pretty cool. It's amazing to hear both of your origin stories, especially yours, Zach, and yours as well, Achintya. I'm excited to take this to the next part, right, where we dig this a little deeper into how you guys seeing the developer behavior shift happen. So my first question is to you, Achintya. I'm directly going to address the elephant in the room, right? So there's the rate of change of how AI has been influencing developer behavior is absolutely insane. And so what's your comment on this, right? Like how have the ways and channels through which developers discover and buy software evolved, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think developers are at the forefront of most of the modern software buying journeys, right? Like how developers behave is probably how others behave couple of months, years later, right? So if you see fundamentally, the search and discovery of tooling has changed a lot. Right? I mean, the journeys that used to start from communities or from search tools or search engines is now coming to sort of, agents, chatbot, and those interfaces where people are discovering the tools. So essentially, I mean, a lot part of the top of the funnel, of mid of the funnel of an evaluation is moving into chat-based interfaces or AI tooling. And yeah, I mean, it's a fundamental shift. And I think, I mean, today, starting with DevTool companies, but tomorrow, any software company will have to think and consider that change because the other buyers will also sort of, start behaving similarly.
Got it. Makes sense. Zach, is there anything else you want to add to this? Are you seeing the shift in your perspective in a different way, or?
No, I mean, Achintya's pretty spot on. It's definitely shifting quickly. I'm actually really curious, like for you, Achintya, like how you guys have kind of thought about your roadmap, like over the coming years. Like lots of the CEOs I know, including myself, have like even in this year alone, like with the improvements that have with Opus and Codex, just the speed of being able to ship has really changed things. So like lots of people have been overhauling their roadmaps entirely, and
Yeah.
we've done the same thing in several ways. So I'm curious.
Right. For us, actually, there are two things. One, there's a change on the signaling side a lot, right? So like Rio is built on the thesis that dev buying journeys are different. And that is
Hmm.
like every month it is becoming more and more different, right? So that's great, right? I mean, there are new places of sources, of intent, and we are capturing that. Like so that thesis becomes very strong, almost, I mean, like how this change is happening. The second thing is that GTM is so much impacted by this whole sort of AI right now, and that is great because one of the biggest things that we wanted to do is look at these patterns of developer activities and predict what's the right time to get in. And probably 4 years back, Rio was not even possible because there are so many signals out. I mean, if you just try to logically do that without AI, right, you will not be able to sort of predict, or you might be able to predict it with less certainty. But now, sort of, so for example, we analyze, if a team is evaluating a customer, we analyze what are the CLIs they are sort of tracking or they're trying out, right? And just understanding the patterns of how these CLIs are doing and how people are logging in into the product. It's a very strong evaluation intent that we give without the customers knowing that yes, somebody was actually evaluating, like 5 engineers at Tesla's were actually evaluating. So now with AI, a lot of these things are possible. So it's a great time to be building something like this where we are predicting the right time for our customers to get in, right? Because in dev tooling, timing is all that matters in dev tooling, right? If you do it too early, the buyer has not learned about that, the teams are evaluating the product. If you enter too late, then probably the developers have either built something on the open source or they've gone to competition. And now prediction of timing using AI and patterns, and that's what we do, has become so much more possible.
Makes sense.
Got it.
Interesting.
In fact, I was also sort of curious in terms of like coming from sort of the brand side or even from the developer side. I still see there is a
Mhm.
lot of sort of utility, but you're a three-sided platform because on the third side there is also the code or the IDE, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you work with them and how do you convince them of something like this, right? Yeah, I mean, I was also curious about that.
I think like from I guess like a convincing standpoint, like it's not so much as like convincing versus like really like just kind of like a logistical question of like, A, where do your opinions lie? Is this something that you care,
Mhm.
like, do you believe in for your company, or do you take a hard stance above it, against it?
Got it.
Because it really seems that
Makes
like
sense.
there's kind of like two camps. There's either like you're really against ads or you're kind of indifferent. And it's the folk that are like indifferent that well they're like I'm not strongly against ads that are like okay cool well there's actually probably opportunity here and it's easy to look at like the history of advertising and go cool that like the
Yeah.
model is proven it's really obvious like it really exists and then when we start looking at like cost per queries and things like model costs dropping, but the amount of tokens per task increasing. You actually see
Right.
like cost per task is still increasing as harnesses
I
improve.
agree.
And so like there are some like these underlying problems that the companies are looking at and going, okay, cool. Like we can differentiate by being opinionated or like having a strong thesis and really just building tooling that we like internally. And as a result, I think you're seeing like lots of beautiful outcomes across from anywhere from the anti-gravity IDE to Cursor to AMP code to factory to code buff and to like all of these different like parts of this market. And it's a really, really massive market because we're not talking
Yeah.
about just developers anymore. We're talking about people in adjacent industries or other professions being able to start using these tools and really benefit from them, which is cool. In terms of like integrating with them, it's really just like logistically, it's like, okay, cool. Does this make sense for your roadmap? If so, when and where? Do you do a free plan only? And is that free plan, does it have capped usage or does it have unlimited usage? Do you have subsidized usage in a paid plan, or is it free plan where you pay some usage but it's discounted usage? It's like there are lots of different ways to kind of like split it up. And so I think that's like the more technical stuff, but even then it's relatively easy. So beyond that, it's really just like, what do the ads look like? Where do they fit? Does it feel good for the platform? Is it
Yeah.
actually helpful? Because if it's not, like I don't want to work with those companies either. So there is like a bit of a joint decision where it's like we have to believe it makes sense for us to invest in and like put resources into, because in the short term there is a lot of work for us to do for every platform, and especially when it comes to code bases, like there's a lot of like safety and like privacy considerations that we have to bake into the product. So we have to be very like mindful about like how we're handling data and like obfuscating enough data so that there's no risk to a developer using the product in the first place. So it's been interesting, but overall it is relatively simple. It's
Agreed.
like we have an SDK, you integrate it, you make money. From there
Of
you can
course.
kind of choose what to do with it.
Interesting. How do you bring that up, Zach? Right? Because I was going to ask you, can you give us a little bit of a inside view into how does this really work? Like, if I am, let's say, building
Mhm,
a payment integration or something in my coding assistant as a developer, does
mhm.
Gravity AI enable the partner to show them a Stripe ad in that moment, or how is it
Correct.
contextually set up? Can you give us a little bit of a view into that?
We're using like conversational signals to kind of identify like, okay, what would be helpful in this conversation? And then we look at like active advertisers. And it's like, okay, who is most relevant and do they meet a certain like relevancy threshold we have? And if they do, if that's kind of met, I'm giving away some of our system here. If it's met, then we're selecting the advertiser and we're injecting it. So like we do all of the verification on our side and we meet any platform requirements that exist, like whether like there's a relevancy as a consideration or like how they want ads worded or structured. We handle all of that. And then this is all happening in real time. So it's happening in like half a second or so. We've actually had to build a very complex and like very fast and optimized system that scales, especially with the amount of conversations that we're processing. The first few months, that was like a very difficult problem for us to solve, was like, how do we get incredibly low latency when we're running like a system that has like several models all talking to each other? At a high level, essentially, like we're selecting the advertiser, we're determining how much the ad unit is worth, and then paying that to a platform.
Got it. So, Zach, you mentioned before, right? Like when it comes to especially developers, first of course, there's very less people who want to see ads, but when it comes to developers, they are especially a little more allergic. But the kind of environment that you have facilitated, that it's relatively, from what I understand, a little more contextual, right? Because it's learning
It's not
from
like
conversational signals, and the system is kind of picking up an advertiser and making it a little more personalized for the experience. The mediums of advertisements that developers would see versus this, how you're seeing a difference?
I haven't run lots of ads specifically for developers on other platforms. Technically, everybody is a consumer. I think like everybody in the world has seen ads that we've ran at least like 5 to 10 times, if I do the math on the spend. We've shown ads to lots of different people. I think just for developers specifically, I understand why they're particularly allergic, because objectively most ads really do suck. They don't look good. They're not even like very intelligent, and that's like a very painful thing to anyone that's inside of a code base. You usually have quite high standards. You really care about accuracy, and when you see ads that aren't relevant or are just ugly, it hurts the soul a little bit. I think that this context is interesting because it is like inside of like the tool which you're using, and then at the same time, like these aren't like big like disruptive ads. They're not like banners or something or pop-ups, or like they're not like particularly interrupting you. They really are designed to be like, we saw that you were working on this. Not sure if you're aware, but Cerebras has a solution to this. Whatever problem you're having, of course, an agent might solve it, or you might need to like build your own solution, but there are pre-built solutions. And I think that's going to continue to exist for a long time. There are things that matter outside of just like being able to strictly write lines of code. There are reasons to continue using vendors and other companies. Maybe some SaaS apocalypse, like some SaaS things don't exist, but many will continue to.
Got it. No, makes sense. Achintya, like you work with more than 200 plus developer companies, right? And DevTool companies. And in your experience, how do you see this playing out, especially the advertising ecosystem inside coding assistants? Do you have any thoughts on that?
First of all, as a brand marketer or say a DevTool marketer, I think contextual advertising is great opportunity, at least sort of in my opinion, right? Because there is nothing so contextual like that, right? I mean, or if somebody is at a place where they are writing code or they're trying out things or they're discovering things, and by the end of the day, while doing this, probably if there is one place where say a developer needs more support, is while they're building things, and at that stage, if they get something contextual, actually, there's something like that, right? So it sort of just fits the part of the puzzle. That's one way of looking at it. Of course, the other is that what we are seeing is that digital marketers are now understanding their buying journeys much more than what was 6 months back, right? And they know that how is it that developers are evaluating them. So for example, look at so many of them have actually taken their docs and expose that as an MCP. So many of them are taking their products and expose this as an MCP. In fact, we at Rio have now launched an MCP gateway for their product and for their documentation so that we can extract the context and start sort of, using that as an intent signal. But I mean, there's a lot of awareness now coming in the brand or the marketing or the revenue teams in terms of how the journeys are sort of, originating, and they are trying to be a part of that.
Right. Makes sense. With all of this shift happening, especially with the behavior and so many updates that we are seeing in new models, and how our AI providers kind of changing their ways around it. If I'm a DevTool company, especially somebody who is sitting at the GTM, right? How do I kind of prepare for this change? And one of the ways, like how you've talked about it, Achint, is with more and more queries kind of moving into IDE from docs and all. One way of it is definitely like understanding where is this agentic discovery and agentic evaluation kind of coming from. You have sold to developers and technical buyers before. If you were in that position today, around the similar landscape that we are seeing today, where would you start? Because it is pretty overwhelming with the pace and all, right? So how would you look at that?
It has changed every part of it. So for example, if it's coming to sort of, the discovery part of it, then as a marketer, they focus on AEO or sort of, at the places where sort of, if my product is being recommended in the chat or in the AI agents become so much more important. So my content strategy changes a lot. The discovery journeys are changing. So for example, like earlier, it was the humans or the developers who were reading documentation, right? Yes, that still happens, right? It happens a lot, but that has moved towards the sort of, bottom of the sort of evaluation funnel. On the discovery part, it's actually an agent that is reading a documentation or sort of, trying out things in the code. So a lot of intent has moved from a human to an agent, right? As a revenue person or as a marketer in a DevTool company, yesterday I had tooling to understand intent from humans. I have to now understand intent from agents, right? I mean, because by the end of the day, sales needs to happen, right? So it just changes the perspective of things. And it sort of, makes so much more sense that once they start understanding this journey, they start asking the right questions in terms of how do we solve for that.
Got it. That
If I
makes
might
sense.
add, if I
Yeah,
might
please.
add as well, it's like the world of like consumer online retailers, like D2C advertising marketing is incredibly optimized, mostly because channels for marketing have existed for a long time for those companies, and they've really performed well for those companies. So there's like hundreds of billions of dollars of ad spend, marketing spend that is poured into those like various marketing channels for these companies. So it's incredibly competitive. There's tons of tooling that exists. There's lots of different options on the market. But what's interesting is like dev tooling historically has not had as many great ways to advertise, to do marketing. Companies like Rio, like you guys, have have existed, but I think like it simply has been like much harder for them to spend money and see it return well. But I think that's starting to change. And like with everything from like GEO to like what we're doing with advertising and just the way that AI is like helping discoverability, it's cool because I think the world of dev tooling is going to see this optimized like performance marketing world start kind of like blending into dev tools, which I guess positions you guys at Rio like really, really, really well for this. Because yeah, there's going to be so much more just simply because you can spend more money and actually get good return from it. There's going to be so much more focus. There's going to be more people working on it. There's going to be more companies needing signals like the ones that you guys provide to actually understand their marketing journeys, to actually like really deeply improve these things as well. So I think we'll see the world of online marketing and digital advertising blend really well with dev tools as a category.
Yeah. And I see that, I mean, like these companies, these teams actually want more revenues to be able to market, right? And so there are two very interesting things that's happening. So on one end, the very definition of a developer has changed in the last 6 months. Like, so of course, like how people who were not sort of, coders themselves, but perhaps now can use actually these tools to say understand schema, build things, right? And that's where sort of there is a massive expansion of TAM for a lot of dev tool companies, which earlier would not have existed. A lot of non-dev tool companies have started behaving like data pipes because or PaaS because now their customers have started sort of using any of these tools like Claude Code, etc., to write simple lines of code and sort of extract data from them as a simple API. So the definitions have sort of expanded a lot for these companies. At the other end, sort of the avenues of marketing have sort of reduced. Like for example, if you look at communities, right? I mean, or look at a lot of places where these developers were actually reading and learning content. Now they are just on an agent or on a tool like an AI tool and learning from there. So it's a very exciting time for everyone.
So Achintya, you mentioned something very interesting as well, right? So the definition of developer, etc. That reminded me of how the decision-making process is also influenced from role to role. I remember you had shared like a very interesting thing about how the role of developers is kind of changing in enterprise tech sales, right? And how that might have certain implications as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
What's happening is that if you look at dev tooling or infrastructure as a software, essentially what you are selling is like a nut and bolt of an engine, which is your software, right? And that nut and bolt, if gone wrong, can actually crash that entire engine. So that nut or that bolt is so important. The evaluation of that often goes to the practitioner who knows how that works, right? And that practitioner will have a lot of say in which tool would be used for building that piece. It can be like AI infra or data infra or any kind of, tooling like, DevOps and so many other places, security, right? These are so critical and so underlying for software. And at the other end, it's what has happened in the last couple of years is that the software has become so composable and so complex in every industry that even the CTOs of the VP of engineering will not be knowing how many tools are being used to actually compose their software. And hence, that's the other reason why even the largest of the enterprises or even the smallest of the companies, like, it's the decision of a tooling is going to the practitioner, and that will happen more and more. Like, it's not a behavior that's going to get any lesser. In fact, looking at how complex software and how composable now it is even more becoming, it's only going to increase.
Got it. Also, when you spoke about the avenues of marketing, right, I was thinking about this, and the question is a little unstructured, but we are seeing like tools being built for AI agents, right? Like we've seen Agent Mill kind of build a tool where it's an email tooling software for AI agents. We have social media platform for AI agents, which is taking us to what can you do to get on the radar of AI tools to kind of recommend you better. And this is a black box, and we're still optimizing it as we go because there are so many articles that are being shipped right now on how Cloud Code chooses or how there is a lot of recency bias that's happening. So there's multiple people are talking about different things. So if there's any thoughts that you guys have that you would like to share.
I'm not inside all of their heads, but like from conversations that I've had, I think it's become clear to companies to at least like the top 10 to 20% of marketers that AI is fundamentally changing the way that marketing works. It's removing some of the advantages that previously existed on like Google search, like the classic SEOs and like even like the more like optimized like Reddit comment sections and
Right.
Stack Overflow, like like branded posts. I mean, I think everyone kind of knows that. Like, people have started to see GEO and like really focus in on GEO. But I think what's a good and a bad thing, ultimately, I believe it's a good thing for the world, is that AI, in theory, will get way better at recommending the best possible product, like specific for your need itself. And so that's really great for the companies that actually do care about product, and it's really bad for the ones that don't. But ultimately, that's a good thing for the world. It's like there are historically one thing that I found a lot when I was working even with consumer brands is that like I came across many really great products, but they were like small companies, and oftentimes they were led by people that did not know how to increase discoverability of their products. Or they did not understand marketing at a high level, or like did not want to involve themselves in it, and they would hire firms like mine. I just think that like distribution is still such a skill, but I do think this kind of like levels the playing fields in distribution a little bit, where as more people use these tools and they're embedded into like everything, where you have agents and video editors and design tools and like your Gmail and like absolutely everything, discoverability is only going to increase, which means it's a really positive thing for like the people that have helpful solutions to their customers. And so hopefully the world switches to like the companies that didn't put as much of a priority on product will start increasing their priorities with product, and we should see far more innovation in general, which is ultimately great for all of us.
I agree. Yeah.
So we're nearing the end, and I just have a very interesting set of questions. With so much of vibe coding and AI assistant coding like spiking up right now, do you think it still makes sense to learn coding for young people? Whatever your answer is, why?
I'm
Yeah,
curious what
Zach, go
Achintya
ahead.
says.
The short answer is yes. I mean, and there are two reasons for it. I mean, let's look at it, probably even sort of what's happening currently, right? What AI is doing is it made top 5% developers like 500% more productive, right? So yes, I mean, that means that people who are actually good at code or good at their job, right, are actually using it. It's helping them become better, right? So in a way, sort of the need for being good at this is not going away, at least from what the trends are showing it right now. The second is, I mean, if you just look at historically, right, I mean, it's like, yes, you have calculators, but then would you stop teaching multiplication to kids in schools, right? I mean, and that's a fundamental question. I mean, the answer to that, if it's the answer is yes, the answer is yes. If the answer is there is no, then the answer is there is no. But yeah, it's a fundamental correlation in that way.
Right. Thoughts,
1,000%.
Zach?
I've tried to like play out in my mind like 5, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, what happens with AI. And ultimately, I think maybe the paradigm will shift again if everybody has a Neuralink chip in their brain and it knows exactly what you're thinking at all times. But up until that happens, communicating with AI is still a problem, and it's still a really important problem. And if you are not specific about things, then an LLM or an agent is always going to do its best to infer what you mean. We've seen it over the last couple of years, and this will improve a lot. But even over the last couple of years, we've seen it where it's like consistently people, download Claude Code or OpenClaw for the first time, and they get it to make software, and it works for them locally, but there's bugs in production. Again, that's going to get better and better. That'll go away, but there will still be like a difference in like the quality of output that an LLM creates in all domains, not like beyond coding. Apply it to insurance, apply it to healthcare. And so knowledge in those areas is still going to be important. However, an LLM can help you get that knowledge too. I don't see a world in which like there is not an advantage by still being a domain expert, but I do think LLMs and AI can help you become a domain expert much faster. But ultimately, if you can communicate what's in your mind better to an agent, then your outputs will get better. And that communication seemingly involves better understanding. If you understand how a system works better, you can be more specific about the design and the architecture of it. And those things are advantages in at least the near term, in at least like the next 2 to 3 years. Watching the evolution beyond that, it will be interesting. Ultimately, even then, like I don't see a world in which AI knows exactly what you're thinking without being embedded in your brain. So I think that paradigm will probably continue to exist until it gets flipped on its head by chips.
Got it. And the next one's a quick fun one, right? Like, what were some of the tools or products that you've discovered or validated through an AI assistant? I'm just curious because I literally remember discovering a voice assistant in a couple of minutes and implementing the use case I wanted to do and have a project ready by a couple of hours. So I just wanted to understand from you guys, like, what was the last tool or an aha moment that you had that you validated something through an AI assistant or an AI chatbot?
There's so many, I don't
Zach.
even know where to start. I think, yeah, like it's like like there's something new every day. More interesting examples are like getting stuck with, we were really trying to evaluate like a variety of different embedding models, and AI helped us like discover embedding models that we didn't realize existed, or like embedding models that performed really well for our specific use case. So I think that's like a more niche example, and then helped us build benchmarking off the back of it and use like a good benchmarking suite. So that's like one micro example of something relatively technical that actually like really improved the outputs that we were getting from even just recommending different models from providers that we were already working with, like Voyage.
For me, as a tech founder, the last thing you want to do is to look into contracts many times, right? Or legal contracts. And I mean, that's, or this financial paperwork. And yet you have to do because nobody else in the company will do, right? But yes, that has been the biggest help. Like, I mean, a lot of things where I wanted to know whether sort of, this contract covers this, covers that. I think, it has been really, really, apart from so many cases, right? I mean, this is something that one I can remember, but it has changed the way sort of, like, as a tech founder, how I derive productivity.
Got it.
One of the
Uh,
interesting discoveries from AI that I've had is like books and stuff as well. It's like I do still find it a helpful way to like expand understanding, and book recommendations from AI has been an interesting one.
Oh,
That has happened to me as well. Like, I mean, especially with the music recommendations. Like, I recently found out that I like a lot of rhythm and blues music. And if I shared, like, one of my favorite playlists is called Iron and Wine. And when I shared it with Claude, it was able to blurt out like a lot of other artists who I had not discovered, and was just like so amazed to kind of hear that out. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And you would expect it to come up in your Spotify recommendations, but it has like never done. So it's crazy. So I have another last one, right? So where do you see this space going in the next couple of years, right? Like with everything, AI native, discovery, GTM, the way evaluation, buying is changing. How does it look like? And if I may, like, I don't know if this is a good way to think about it, but somebody told me that when there were a lot of digital marketing changes happening, especially in the landscape when Amazon was building it out, I'm not sure if it was their CEO or management had commented about like, there were a lot of changes that were happening, but their kind of principles were aligned on what are the things that they are seeing are going to remain constant, especially in the AI native GTM space. If we had to comment on what are some of the things that are going to remain constant, which we can kind of rely on, even with all of the changes around, how would we think about that if you were to comment on that?
I agree. I mean, products and startups should be built on things that don't change rather than sort of, just things that might change temporarily. And one of the things that we fundamentally believe is that the buying journeys of software are going to become more and more technical in nature, right? And one of the very initial thesis on which actually Rio was built is that software will become more and more composable, and more people will behave like software developers, right? And that sort of seems to be coming true, right? So it's that way a very exciting time for a company like us.
I agree with Achintya in this, that we'll slowly see more and more people become developers. I actually think that'll only increase. It's like with the irony of like AI being the first replacing the people that built it, the engineers and the devs, it only makes software more powerful. It does make it more accessible to more people. So to kind of echo Achin's point, like that we will see way more people becoming developers. And in that sense, again, completely correct, where buying journeys will start at the development level. So it's definitely an evolution of marketing for all software.
Makes sense. So, Zach, what's next for Gravity? What are some of the things that are coming up exciting for you?
I'm a very simple person. We buy ads and we sell ads, basically. We will buy more ads, we will sell more ads. What that means is we'll accept more platforms as advertisers, we'll let more people off the wait list, and this is the same on the platform side. It's really like integrate with more platforms, let them start using this as a monetization channel. And beyond that, there's a lot of different ad units that I think will be very exciting that we'll start seeing. Ads that you can click on that go and have an agent buy the product for you or install something automatically for you.
Makes sense. Achin, the same question.
So for us, it's a very exciting time. We want to capture new sources of intent signals. That's one of the most exciting things that we're working on. And a lot more is in pipeline today that's going to come out soon in terms of what are the places where we are sort of, going to capture intent. We are working a lot on partnerships right now with specialized providers of sort of AI tooling where we can sort of, capture this. The one thing we would really want to focus on is, are we the best provider of GTM signals to anybody who has technical buying journeys, right? And yeah, just keep on working more and more on it.
With that, is there anything else you want to say to anybody watching this? If you want to drop a line about where can people find you, etc.
I'm at Zach the Oldham on all platforms and try gravity.ai.
I'm
Beautiful.
Achintya at Reo.Dev, also on LinkedIn, where most of the people find me.
Got it. No, I think with
Love
that, we are at the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for taking out time for today. I absolutely had an amazing time. Right. And for
Thanks,
anybody
guys.
watching as well, thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, thank you.